That's for your volume.
Okay.
How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. But yeah, as I was saying, meeting people, it's an interesting journey because you meet people and they know something that you don't know.
Of course.
And then it becomes valuable information. And that's the curiosity I've been having these days. I just want to learn. And I want to learn from different kinds of people. And it's gotten us in front of you.
So why do you feel that way? What happened?
I spent a lot of time in isolation and being away from people in my life. You know, after a sudden death in the family, I spent a lot of time reflecting on myself. And
so you isolated yourself.
Yeah. A lot of isolation, and then over the years, I learned that as human beings, we need to be social. We're social creatures. We have to learn to communicate and talk with one another, understand their feelings, and people understand my feelings. And we've been building on that ever since. You know, it's been a journey, but it's interesting how you see your life progress day by day. Even if it's little steps, it still progresses.
Absolutely. If you don't do that, you're not really living, are you?
Very true. You know, you could be in a dumpster and you have the opportunity to change your life. It's all in your hands. It's in your brain. The brain is a mechanism. It's a powerful mechanism. But I just feel like it plays a role where we kind of give up on ourselves and then we go back. And then we get stuck. But yeah, being social is very, very important to me now. I love it. I'll be walking down the road and I'll say, hey, how are you? And I'll just look at me and say, yeah, good. And then I'll just walk away.
I was talking to someone about this just yesterday. And I said, well, what's life about? It's about relationships with people.
Yeah.
When you really think about it, what is it about? Is it about what we grow up believing in, especially in this culture? It's about relationships, man. And it starts with your family. But the problem is if you don't have a good relationship with your parents in that family, right at the beginning, you know, psychology tells us that the first 7 months of a child's life largely determine what sort of future they're likely to have in terms of having sufficient self-esteem and self-love in order to cope with whatever life throws at you.
Wow. The first 7 months.
And if you don't get that as an infant growing up, then you've been deprived of a really important part of yourself to help you to cope. Because life's, you know, I say to kids, because I do talks in schools, one of the things I talk about is suffering. I put this slide up and it's suffering, and I say, do you learn about this at school? Is there a subject called suffering? And they go, no. And I say, some of you already know, because there are kids in schools who come from particularly migrant backgrounds, you know, they're refugees, they come here, they've come from war, they've come from whatever it is, and they've been traumatised, so they know what it means. And then there are other kids who grow up in families where there's been trauma of different, and there's a lot of kids these days without a, you know, father figure around, and sometimes even a mother figure. So the whole point is suffering. And I say to them, you got to learn not to avoid this, because it's going to come. If it hasn't come yet, it'll come, I guarantee you. You got to learn how to face it and try and work through it, come out the other end.
Wow.
Now, when you face it, one of two things can happen. You can be broken by it, right? It can break you, suffering. Or it can make you, if you face it and find a way to work through it. I say this a lot to prisoners who want to change. I say, look, you've suffered. Yeah, you've been a victim too. But now you've been creating victims. Victims create victims, create victims. So if you want to break the cycle, you've got to make some decisions. But you've got to go through that suffering.
Yeah.
And you're going to need help to do it. But if you can take the suffering that you've experienced already, right, and you can take the things you've learned from it, the positive things out of it, and there are, right, you can then use that to build a life. And that's why the best workers in drug and alcohol are ex-users.
That's true.
Isn't it?
The experience.
That's why NA, AA, that's why they work so well. They're peer-driven, people that have been in your shoes who understand. So, yeah, suffering. Have you suffered, have you, in your life a bit?
I would say, yeah, a lot. But I've never reflected on it. I kind of bury it away.
Push it away from me.
Yeah, you know, because I learned over the years that we actually need suffering in order to grow. It shapes you who you are. We need suffering. In the early stages of my life, I thought about, why am I suffering? Why is this happening? But the truth reality, there is no answer. You just need it, and you just got to go with it. There is no answer here or answer there. It's just you against suffering. And you just got to go off the flow and try to better yourself. Because suffering is like a fire. It can either cook for you, keep you warm, or it can burn you and burn everything around you.
Absolutely.
So you've got to use it to your advantage. Top athletes, to be the best, you've got to suffer. You know what I mean? I learned that in boxing. Some days I'd stay back in the gym and everyone would go and I'm still there training. So I found it's a very valuable tool. It's like fear. People, fear is good. Fear is really good. So it's a journey. It's a journey to continue getting better.
Some people would not like or agree with you saying you need suffering. Suffering's good. They'd say, well, no. Why would I want to suffer? And in one sense, I kind of get that. But the reality is, rightly or wrongly, it's built into life. It's
Really?
going to happen.
Yeah.
You can't avoid it, right?
That's right.
I mean, you said before, what got you on this journey that you're on now is someone died. And I don't need to know details, but obviously you suffered
Yeah.
that loss, you know, that gaping hole. Well, you can fall into it and disappear, never come out again.
That's right.
Or you can find a way to climb out of it and move on. And then you meet someone else. I mean, this has been my story, the prison experience. You come out, I knew that wasn't good and I had to find a new way, and I did with help. But then I used that suffering, what I learned, and I applied it to my life, and I was able to help other people going through the same kind of suffering. And that's why I decided to do prison work, you know,
Wow.
and why I went to uni later in life again to get a qualification, because I knew it helps having a qualification, you know.
It does.
Society respects qualifications. So I got that as well, and then I had lived experience, and I spent most of my life, you know, trying to help these people as best I could. But at the same time, not presuming that I know what that person and that person and that person went through, because my suffering compared to theirs was kind of minuscule. And yet other people would look at me and say, man, you've suffered a lot, you know, the years in prison and everything that happened and 2 failed marriages. And yeah, it is so. It's relative, right? But there are other people. I'm constantly doing this. I'm looking and I'm meeting people and I'm thinking, wow, imagine being that person.
Yeah.
How blessed am I? They would love to be in my shoes. They would love it. Do you know what I mean? So it's about keeping your eyes open and noticing all this stuff, being aware, being present, not on some wild goose chase chasing a crazy dream, you know.
It's very true.
And a lot of people do that, and the dream's not a good one.
Yeah, 100%. I've been more aware these days. I'll be walking down the street in the city and I'll just look around and I'll say to myself, you never know what people are going through. You just don't know.
Absolutely.
And that's why you need to be very cautious, careful with how you treat people.
Yes.
And how you approach people.
Yes.
And the kind of respect you give them and being understanding.
Yes.
I had someone on last time, a guest, his name was Joel, and he was driving on the road and someone was tailgating him. And he goes, I was just ready to pull over and just give him the rundown. But then he goes...
Haven't you been there? I have.
Yeah. He never ends well. But then he said, maybe he's racing to go home because there's an emergency. You just don't know.
Maybe he's psychotic and he's off his head at the moment. And if I go and have a go, it could be bad. You know, there's so many reasons.
Take me back. How was life? How was life growing up?
Life growing up? Well, I grew up in a Greek, fairly traditional Greek migrant working class family. And I remind people that my parents grew up on a beautiful Greek island. You know, Greek islands are famous, right?
Yep.
Everyone wants to go there. Why would they leave a beautiful island? The war, the Second World War. So my mother and parents went through that, and, you know, they told me stories about the suffering. Yeah? And that would have been such a hard decision to leave everything familiar your whole life and jump on a boat for a month and land at Port Melbourne and start a new life. But that's what the migrants did. That's what migrants have always done.
That's right.
And they came to Australia with my two sisters who were, I think, just newly born and, you know, 2 years old, and I was born here 2 years later. So we're talking the early 50s. And there weren't a lot of wogs and dagos around then.
Nah.
It was the early migration of the Southern Europeans, Greeks and Italians, basically. And so they worked. They worked in they did all the jobs that another race does now, all the jobs no one else wants to do. They did them.
Wow.
And a lot of it was factory work because there was a lot of industry in Melbourne. You know, Port Melbourne, Holden, Ford, et cetera, et cetera. So they worked all those jobs, and my dad did the same. They couldn't speak English. They didn't know the culture. And they worked hard. So I grew up in that environment. At home, everything was Greek. Greek language, Greek customs, Greek food. You step out the door, you're in Australia.
Yeah.
My parents wanted me to stay Greek, except I'm in Australia, I'm not in Greece, right? I didn't even know Greece. So that was kind of my first recollection of being a bit confused. You know, this doesn't, why, I felt different, a bit different. But anyway, I guess the major crisis occurred when I was about 6. My father worked in a factory loading trucks, and he had a serious accident. And his head was affected. His nervous system was damaged. And he never worked again. And he was quite young. So overnight, my family went from being a normal kind of migrant family to being a poor migrant family, dependent on welfare. So I grew up on welfare.
Yeah.
And I could tell you a lot of stories, and it's not, you know, poor me, it's just what happened.
That's reality, yeah.
It was reality. We couldn't afford, I remember that. That was the, you know, the thing I used to hear, we can't afford that, we can't afford that. So growing up at school, I'll give you an example. I was pretty good at sport. When I was in year 10, I was in the all Melbourne secondary school sports. I used to throw the javelin, the spear.
I did see a photo online of that. Yeah.
That's an old Greek thing from the original Olympics. And I was pretty good. Like I did well. And I wanted to go to the sports and wear a nice tracksuit. And in those days, Adidas was the go.
Yeah.
And they had these two-tone tracksuits, you know, lighter bottom, darker top or whatever. but they were expensive. So what do you do when you're a kid and your mother sews and makes your tracksuits, and your mother cuts your hair, and your mother, because of money.
There's no money, yeah.
So you either put up, or another thing you can do is steal it.
Yeah.
And I became a little thief at a very young age. It started, I remember the first time I stole something. I went to the local milk bar. I had money to buy some sweets. And when the shop owner, he was an old bloke, he turned around to do something, I saw on the counter, and a little voice in your head says, take it, take it. That's called your, what is that?
Yeah, what
But
is
there's
that?
another little voice on the other side of my head was saying, no, that's wrong. You know, you didn't grow up stealing. Your parents don't want you to become a thief. But I listened to the little negative voice and I took the lolly. That was my first recollection of ever stealing. Now, most kids steal at some point, but they stop at some point, or they get caught and they stop. Me, I was good at it and I loved it. I loved stealing. And I loved, as I was growing up, stealing things that were more difficult to steal, like the tracksuit, because that was Myer. And I knew that at Myer they had store detectives and they had cameras here and there.
So you like the thrill of it?
I loved, the challenge. I loved planning it, preparing it.
How old were you at this point?
With the tracksuit, I would have been about 15, 16.
Wow.
And I remember, just to finish that story, to show you how devious I was a good kid. I didn't cause trouble at school. You know, teachers liked me. I respected teachers. I did my homework. I was a nice kid. But I had this side to me, this secret side that no one knew about. So one day I went and found this, those Coke boxes that they put cans of Coke in. And I took this box. This all happened in my head. And then I went to the newsagent. I bought some wrapping paper and some ribbon and some tape. Long story short, I made a box that looked like a gift wrapped with ribbon on it. And on one end there was a trap door that I made. And I went into Myer. The box, I made sure the tracksuit fitted inside the box, and I went up and I just made no one was in. Boop, and in it went. And the trapdoor shut, and it looked like I was holding this gift. And I walked out. I got the tracksuit. You know how many times I used that box? And everywhere. Yeah. Stealing. So growing up without things and stealing and work was a part of my childhood. The first job I got, I was 11. I remember that. I grew up in Carlton back in the day when it wasn't a popular suburb. And this guy used to come around and get some of the kids. And it was a bit like at the footy where they have these straps with boxes selling, pies and things.
Yeah.
But we had seeds, packets of seeds, flower seeds, vegetable seeds, and every door we'd knock on the door and I'd say, excuse me, would you like to buy some vegetable or flower seeds for the deserted Aboriginal mothers and children? And sometimes they'd buy something and sometimes they'd give you a donation. If they gave me a donation, I used to take it. Instead of putting it in the tin, I used to put it in my pocket. Why? Because I figured that white Anglo-Saxon Australian didn't give a shit about Aboriginals. He was using me and us, giving us peanuts for this. And I thought, well, you're ripping me off, so I'm going to rip you off. The important thing is don't get caught. Don't get caught. And that's how I grew up thinking. From the age of 14, I was financially independent of my parents because they didn't have the money, so I had to work. And I worked at the Vic Market. I used to get up on Saturday morning and someone would pick me up and take me there at 5 a.m. and work till 1 or 2 or whatever it was. And I did different jobs, delivering newspapers. And then I got a job at it was like a milk bar delicatessen. And I used to come home from school twice a week, jump on my bike, ride 8 kilometres to the shop, work till 9 o'clock, ride home. Saturday or Sunday, 9 a.m. till 9 p.m. in that shop, working. Christmas holidays, 6 days a week in that shop, every day. I hated it. But it was money. It was how I could buy this or do that, save up for a little Volkswagen when I was older. But again, I'm thinking, the boss is a nice bloke and I liked him, but he was paying me kids' wages. And I was working harder than anyone, man, and getting all the shit jobs too, you know, clean the toilet, wipe the footpath, clean the fridges. So what did I do? $20 customer, $20, I'd register 15. That's $5 for me. By the end of the day, I've got an extra $60, $70. Now it's fair. I used to knock off cartons of cigarettes and sell them half price at school, sometimes to the parents of my friends.
Wow.
You see? So this thinking, stealing, became part of who I was. I was what's called a kleptomaniac. It's a Greek word.
Wow.
Kleptomania it's like an addiction.
You were addicted to the thrill of stealing.
I used to steal things I didn't even need, you know, just for the sake of stealing. It was crazy.
Crazy that box you created at such a young age.
Yeah, exactly.
And you were being very technical with it.
Yeah, you're devious, mate. Very devious. Nice kid, but...
How long did this go for?
Oh, and also, you go home with a new tracksuit and your mother says, where'd you get that?
Yeah.
And what do? You lie.
You lie. Yeah.
So I was a really good liar. I could look you in the eye, anybody, and lie, and you'd believe me because I was so, you know, genuine the way I came across, and I was a good kid.
Wow.
Yeah.
Lying doesn't last long. My father used to tell me always, the string of lying is very short, Ahmed. You know, it's a very it's an Arabic saying, and it's very true. It's very short.
Absolutely.
It comes to an end. How long did that spree last for you?
Well, right through secondary school.
Wow.
You know, I had things, and I worked. I worked as well, and I was able to buy myself a little Volkswagen when I turned 19, and I was able to do things and go out and, you know, feel good about myself and buy the latest fashion these or the latest mullet-styled haircut.
Were you saving up at this point as well?
Not really.
You just spend.
I was spending. Well, I saved up and got a car.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I didn't blow it all.
Yeah.
I knew the value of money because I lived in a family that didn't have enough, you know, and so my father used to make me walk to the market every Saturday morning with him, walk from North Carlton to the market, which was quite a way.
Yeah.
And then on the way back with all the week's groceries, he would not catch the tram. And I'd say, catch the tram, Michelle, I can't carry these. And he'd say, no, it's wasting money.
Yeah.
Wasting money.
Poverty.
I don't remember a birthday present growing up, ever. I never had birthdays because that's money, spending money. You'd be in the lounge room, go to the kitchen to get a glass of water. You'd come out, the light would be off, the TV would be off. My father, he'd switch them off, wasting electricity. You're in the shower, hey, hurry up, don't waste water. It was like that all the time, you know, you hung up about money. Can't afford this, can't afford that, can't do that. At the market, I used to say, Dad, can you get me some hot jam donuts? You know? Not once. No, you don't need donuts. Why? Because that's spending money you don't need to spend. We've got food, that sort of thing. And then the food, the bananas, they were kind of, you know, the ones with the sort of black marks in them. Not the best ones, because who could afford the best of it? So I grew up with that mindset, and I wanted things. I wanted things like other kids. I wanted the latest this and the latest that.
Because you couldn't get them.
Because I couldn't get them.
And everything was no, and money was always a problem. So
Absolutely.
now that gets implemented in your mind.
Absolutely.
It becomes like I'm going to overcome this money problem.
That's
and I'm
right.
going to do everything that's necessary.
That's right.
Even if I lie and steal.
Do you know, I call money the number one addiction in Australia and probably the world. Money. Not heroin or ice or cannabis or money, mate. People are addicted
Why is
to
that?
it. Why do I say that?
Yeah.
Well, because they are. Because they're driven by the dollar.
Mm.
I mean, I've worked in families. When I started out as a youth worker, I did youth work for quite a while. And very often, you know, I'm Greek background, and I spoke on the Greek radio once, and man, I was inundated. People calling, oh, can you help us? And then I'd, you know, talk to them, and I'd find out they've got a son or a daughter who's got a drug addiction. Oh, can you please help us? But don't tell anybody. Keep it quiet.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want our family to find out. And I used to say, I thought that that's what you got a family for. Like in a time of suffering, crisis, you meant to sort of, but everyone was fearful, you know, what would people say? All that sort of crap.
It's a very cultural thing. It's
And it's widespread.
yeah.
Yeah. In some cultures, a bit more than others, I think.
Mm.
Anyway, and I would get involved in the family, meet the kid, whatever. And do you know how many times I wanted to say to the parents, and sometimes I did, but I tried to be discreet. And I say it till this day, because today it's probably worse than ever. Your kid's got a drug addiction. Your kid's angry. Your kid's whatever your kid is. And one of the reasons is, with respect, that you have not spent time with them when they were growing up, because you were busy chasing. And I understand, you know, the mortgage, the house, the furniture, the car, the this. But, you know, while you're chasing all that for your family, your kid's growing up. And if you don't spend time with your, particularly fathers and sons, I think that's one of the big issues today in this generation, that these little boys in, because prison's predominantly males. The
That's
ratio
right.
is about 35 to 1, male to female.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons is that they're growing up and they haven't got a role model that is male. You know, this is a man. This is what a man is. It's become very complex now for a lot of other reasons too. But when there's no one there, you miss out on something significant. And, you know, if you spent more time with your kid would be a bit different today, because your relationship with them would be different. And part of the reason they're doing what they're doing is because they're unfulfilled. They're unhappy. They're disconnected from you. And if you think that providing things for them when they're teenagers, and then after you're doing all this, they're going to want to spend time with you or they respect you. It doesn't just happen because you're called father and he's called son or daughter. It doesn't just happen. You've got to invest in it, in the relationship.
That's right.
Yeah.
Because what also happens, I've realised with a lot of the youngsters, they start to seek it outside.
Absolutely.
And that's when they start hanging around with the wrong crowds and the wrong friends.
That's right.
The boys.
Where do I belong?
Yeah.
That's what, particularly in the States, you know, where gangs, you go into their prisons, man, and there's a very clear distinction between the whites, the Hispanics and the blacks. I've been in the prisons in America, and it's belonging. It's belonging. You know, outlaw motorcycle clubs, whatever it is, we all want and need to belong. And if it's not happening at home, it's got to happen somewhere. Because the most disconnected people are the most tragic. The people that are isolated, left out, lonely. What do? They frizzle up and disappear. They die. They kill themselves. You know, I mean, as we said at the outset, life's about relationships. Life-giving relationships.
Yeah, I like
Unfortunately, it doesn't happen anywhere near enough. Getting back to my father, he loved me so much. Problem was, he didn't know how to show it.
Mm.
You know, he worked hard, and when he got sick, he never worked again. My father was a classic prescription drug addict. I remember he showed me, you see that, Arthur? He had a handful of pills. One in the morning, one at night. Without those pills, he'd be sick. He'd hang out, you know. And he was around the house a lot because he didn't work, but he emotionally wasn't there. He was in his own little world. When I started using drugs, I used to go to the medicine cabinet that my parents had and, you know, I'd find a nice little supply there. This, that, whatever. So, you know, I said to my mother, I remember after my dad died years later, I said, Mum, how come I can't remember ever playing with my dad when I was a kid? And especially when I became a father, this hit me, especially. Because I played with my kids. Man, I spent so much time. Number one supporter at the footy, at the this, at the that, always there with them, doing things with them, getting to know, to help them to know their father, you know, warts and all. How come I can't remember my father hugging me, kissing me, telling me he loved me, doing all this stuff with me, coming to the footy? And she said, oh, Arthur, look, he didn't know how, different generation, whatever. But I felt deprived because of that. By the same token, my mother, she got married at 16. 16, mate.
Yeah, very young.
My father was 26.
Yeah.
You kind of think, what? But he loved her passionately. And they went through the war, as I said, no education to speak of. In those days, it was about survival, you know, work, feed. Come to Australia, cop the racism that was here and still is. And then my mother suffered a number of miscarriages. She got sick, and when my father got sick, she had a nervous breakdown. I didn't know all this when I was a kid. All I knew is I didn't like my mother. My mother was obsessive compulsive in the extreme. My mother was neurotic. I mean, if you saw my room growing up as a kid, man, it was so neat and tidy, and that's not natural for teenagers.
Yeah, nah.
You know, you're meant to.
You're supposed to have a messy room.
My mother was on my back all the time, you know, and this. And another thing I should say, it's because it's what happened and it shaped me. My mother was extremely religious. Now, Greek Orthodox. Doesn't matter if you don't believe in God or you're Greek Orthodox, right? And my mother, every Sunday, church. I remember this from a little kid growing up. We had to put on our best clothes and we went to church. And when I was about, 12, 13, my mother called me in one day and she took me in to the priest. And she arranged with him for me to become an altar boy. Did she ask me? No. And suddenly I'm in the church. Not only do I have to go to church, and it was, if you know anything about the Orthodox church, it's icons and they've got tradition and that's all very nice, but it meant nothing to me. Yeah. And I couldn't understand anything, and the rituals and the this and the that. But suddenly I'm not just going to church, man, I'm in the inner sanctum of the church.
Yeah.
I'm in the, behind the curtain with the priest. And I was scared of the priest. And I used to watch him and, I had to wear this white tunic all the way to the ground with a big cross on the front, and he'd come out and I'd sort of be holding the candles and all these rituals. And the only thing I liked about the church was, on Sundays, they used to have the bread and the wine, right?
Yeah.
And it was real wine.
Wow.
Not just grape juice. It was real, fermented. And when he'd go out to do his homily, his speech, whatever, I used to get the wine and drink it. Drink. And by the end of the service, not too bad.
A bit tipsy.
Bit tipsy. And then when I was about 13, very impressionable age, right? Because you're changing from being a little boy into this other creature called an adolescent, and you go through puberty, and man, that's one of the most significant changes in a person's life. It's one of the big ones, and it's where a lot of young people make big mistakes. wanting to be this or experience that or smoke or drink or have sex, right? And if you start making poor choices, it can have negative consequences. So in my case, as I went through that process, my mother left the Orthodox church and she went to this other church, which was called an evangelical church. Now, I won't get into it too deeply except to say this. These people took their faith very seriously. They used to meet, they used to carry Bibles, actually read them, and they used to pray. And I remember sitting there looking at them thinking, these people seem really genuine, and they used to help each other practically and care, but I didn't want to know about it. I found it irrelevant and boring. I just wanted to be a normal kid. But my mother made me go there, and I grew to hate it. I hated it, and I hated her for making me go. And when I got to the age of 15, I said, Mum, I'm not going. That's it. Problem was, my mother went, my father went, my sisters went, and that's when me and my family parted company.
The division.
And I went that way, and they went that way. And that was huge. Much bigger than I realised at that stage as a young person. Looking back, I can see it was a big break, a big change in my life. Because once you're on your own and you're not following your family's values and lifestyle, you've got to follow something.
Yeah.
So what did I follow? Yeah.
What was that road?
Well, to some extent, you're kind of on this path or journey and you just go with the flow. So when you're at school, I got to year 12, right? So what happens after year 12? Well, you can go and get a job or you can go to uni. I was a reasonably good student and I did reasonably well. But in year 12, mate, I got ducks. Do you know what ducks means?
No.
D-U-X. Means you got the top mark.
Wow.
Me. Now, if you told me in year 12 that I was going to get the top mark, I would have laughed because I didn't see myself. I thought there were much smarter students than me. But I got it. I don't know. Did I fluke it? Whatever. But I got it. Top mark.
Insane.
I was also the school captain. Yeah.
While you were stealing.
Well, no one knew about it. I was a good kid, remember?
Yeah.
And they chose me because I had leadership qualities.
Oh.
You know, other kids liked me. I was good at sport. I was a good spokesperson for the school. You know, I achieved things that other kids didn't. So they made me school captain. So I had all that going for me. So at the end of year 12, before the exam results came out, I had to make a big decision. What am I going to do next year? Okay, it's a huge issue for a young person. And I thought about it, and my art teacher said to me, Arthur, you should be a sculptor. Right? Sculpting? And I said, what? Sculptor? And she said, yeah, like we need sculptors in the world. I mean, you go into a park, you see a sculpture. Someone did that, right? I'm thinking, sculpting? It's like, is that a fair income job? And I liked the idea. I really did, because why? I had a gift. I could, I used to grab a bit of clay and like Michelangelo, there's something that needs to escape and I've got to get it out. So I went to this little art college in Preston at the time, and I took some of my work and they saw it and they said, yeah, we'll accept you. It's going to take about 3 or 4 years. You're going to come here every day, 5 days a week, blah, 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 and you're going to become a sculptor. And I'm thinking, oh, grouse. How do you tell your mum and dad that? How do you tell your father who keeps saying to you, Arthur, we came to Australia for you and your sisters to have a future. Please, Arthur, be successful. Become a lawyer or a doctor.
Yeah.
That's what my dad used to say to me, a lawyer or a doctor. Okay. So I didn't know how to tell him that I was going to become a sculptor, but I didn't have to tell him because then the exam results came out and I got ducks. So suddenly, I could become a lawyer if I wanted to. I could choose that instead of sculpting.
Because you got your marks.
I got the marks. And I wanted my dad to be proud of me. I wanted my father to, Arthur, I wanted that.
Yeah.
So that's when I made a really bad choice, Ahmad. I gave the sculpting away and I went to Melbourne Uni and I enrolled to do an arts law degree. 5 years. You come out of it with an arts degree and a law degree. And I knew straight away, although the arts was okay, the humanities subjects, the law was a big mistake. It's like my soul was just squeezed and stifled. I hated it. I didn't understand it. I didn't want to understand it. I couldn't relate to the other students. In those days, nearly all of them were private school kids.
Yeah.
And instead of, saying, well, okay, I'm different, I come from this background, and that's how it is, and I should be proud, I tried to become like them. I tried to dress like them, act like them, be them, because I was so ashamed of my own background. I thought I was illegitimate in the sense that I wasn't smart like them. I fluked it, and that's how I got there. But more importantly, I hated the course, and I should have said, mistake, but I didn't. And the further I went, the worse it got. Yeah, the more depressed I became. More depressed. So what do you do when you're depressed and you're young? What did you do?
Isolated pretty much. Isolated or, sit in a room or just disconnect from everyone. There's only a couple of options. It's either drugs, alcohol, or partying.
There you go.
Or chasing thrills, which is robbing people or being violent. That's the only way.
Drugs, sex and rock and roll.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I used to wonder why they say that, drugs, sex, and when I was young I used to hear that, drugs, sex and rock and roll. And then I ended up doing drugs, sex and rock and roll, so to speak.
Wow.
Because what you're doing is you're embracing a lifestyle. That's the path that you're going to take. And that's what I decided, that's what I wanted. Because I remember I used to drink because I was depressed. But I didn't even know I was depressed. We didn't have Beyond Blue. We didn't have teaching at school. We didn't have social workers at school you could go and talk to. I wish we did. We had no sex education, for goodness sakes. Nothing.
Nothing, no.
I mean, so you got all these urges, you're growing up, hormones are going nuts. You're seeing sex, images here, there, everywhere. It started to happen on TV. And I used to get aroused and stimulated. What do I do with these feelings? Yeah. What's a relationship meant to be with a woman? My mother's and father's, that wasn't a very good one. I mean, I didn't know what to do. So how do you learn? Well, you learn from dirty jokes. You learn from magazines, Penthouse and Playboy. And if the internet had been around, man, I would have been an internet junkie. And you know which sites I would have been? Yeah. Porn.
Yeah.
Porn is probably the most popular, they're the most popular sites on the internet. And a lot of young kids get into them. And that's where they learn about sexuality, which is so distorted. But that's what I learned in my own way. Mm. So I was mixed up, I was confused, I was depressed. And so you start drinking.
How old were you at this point?
I would have been 19.
Wow, very young still.
Yeah, still young. And I started drinking.
Third or fourth year in university?
By that stage, I was probably in my second year.
Okay.
But I started drinking earlier. Because I played footy, right? Mm. And Aussie rules footy and alcohol go hand in glove, right?
Yeah.
So I'd go to the club, underage. Come on, Bolkas, have a beer, I remember we had a men's night one night and I shouldn't have been drinking. And they made me drink so much beer, like it was coming out of my ears. And they were all laughing. This is like an initiation to adulthood, to manhood. Yeah. Be a man, be tough, hit 'em hard, don't be a sook, don't be a crybaby, I was going to say F, and lots of that. You know, that's what it was all about.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that's what I thought, that's what it was all about. So you got to get good at doing the sex and the drinking and the toughness and the hit 'em hard and be a man and all that bullshit. And this went on. And then one day at uni, I went to we used to call them discos, clubs now. And I saw this woman.
Oh, there it is.
She was all my dreams come true, mate. She was gorgeous. Turns out her name, I won't say her name, but let's say Jenny. Jenny was 3 years older than me, and she was a model.
Phew.
So she had the hourglass figure. And I remember she walked past me, and I started following her, and I got to know her. And she liked me, and I was rapt. I'd never had a girlfriend up till that stage. I'd lost my virginity about 2 years before through a woman I met at the milk bar who was 10 years older than me. And I wanted more of that. I wanted more. And she and I started going out, and one day at a party, she pulls out of her bag a joint. Now, I knew what cannabis was. I wasn't stupid. And I'd been offered it at uni, at the footy club, but I always said no. Why? Because I'm an athlete. Athletes don't take drugs. They drink like fish, but you don't take drugs. But now here's my girlfriend, lights it up, and she offers it to me. And I'm thinking, oh, shit, should I take it? Shouldn't I take it? Like, that's drugs. She takes drugs. But I was curious too. Yeah. Because I noticed that these people who smoked it used to laugh and I was a bit of a depressive. So I took it. I nearly choked. And she showed me how to smoke, a little bit of airing, when you suck it in and all that. And I got stoned and I thought, wow. Seriously, it sounds silly. Got to the stage, I thought, well, this is the meaning of life. To feel like this. Yeah. Because I felt so good. Because cannabis is a stimulant. The only problem is it wears off. And then when it wears off, you go back to being who you were before. Yeah. Except now, I was more depressed because I knew what it felt like to feel really good.
So you chase the high again.
So exactly. So you start chasing the high. And after a while, that becomes a problem because it's expensive. Yeah. And I was still a student. And you go to uni and you walk in and you sit down because you're stoned. Because I used to carry a little pocket bong. And before a lecture, I'd have a couple of cones and I'd walk in and just sit there. But taking nothing in because I'm out of it.
Yeah, you're not here.
Not there.
You're in the clouds somewhere.
And so eventually what happens is you fail.
Yeah.
You fail an exam. First time I failed. And because I'd already dropped another subject because I wanted to be with my girlfriend all the time, the government had issued me with a thing called some sort of a scholarship to help the poor kid doing law. They took it away because I needed to pass in order to keep getting it, and I'd failed. Wow. And suddenly, this isn't anymore a matter of, work a bit harder in the milk bar over Christmas.
You lost your chance.
I mean, it was too much money that I needed. I couldn't go to my dad and get a loan, could I?
No way.
So what do you do? And I started thinking about it.
Back to the craft.
Back to the craft, exactly. Except, what do you do? How do you get that much money?
Yeah.
And I thought of all sorts of things, and nothing seemed to be the answer. And then one day, I was watching TV, and there was a robbery, a movie about a robbery. And I watched how the guy runs in. He had a balaclava and a shotgun. And we've all seen those movies. Yeah. He gets the money, he runs out, and when he runs out, there's a cop there. The guy's dead. Up until that point, I thought, oh, this is grouse.
Yeah.
4 minutes. He's in, he's out.
And he's got a stack of money.
But the cop killed him. Oh, that's no good. And then I started thinking, if you were to do that, how could you do it in a way that you could get away with it? Because I was a smart little boy and a bit devious, I came up with this crazy idea. I thought to myself, well, if I could disguise myself. Now, remember, in those days, TABs, that's what I robbed. For those who don't know, TABs used to be the only place where you could gamble.
Yeah,
They were shop fronts. There was no online, remember?
No.
So you had to go into this place and you'd gamble, and they had money. I thought, if I just walk in there with a balaclava and a shotgun, it's pretty obvious why I'm there. Because I went and checked one out, and it was full of men gambling, right?
Big money.
Yeah, money, and lots of men. I'm thinking, if I run in with a balaclava, no, I can't do it. And then I thought, if I disguise myself and I don't look obvious, that would be better. And at school, I learned to do some drama. I knew how to put makeup and change my appearance. Long story short, 2 months later, I walked into a TAB and I disguised myself with a wig. I bought a false moustache and goatee beard. I got sponges, special, and I stuck them in my nose so they were like that, and in my cheeks so that they were like that. Sunglasses. You wouldn't have recognised me. I got padding and padded my arms and shoulders, put a jacket on. I looked much bigger. And then I thought, you need a weapon. Now, I wouldn't have known. I mean, yeah, I could have got a rifle and cut it down, but I didn't want to get a real weapon. I didn't want to hurt anyone. Most armed robbers don't.
Yeah,
all they want is the money.
The
And sometimes a hero gets involved and, you know, these guys don't muck around.
Yeah.
But in those days, there was a thing called army disposal stores. Some of them still exist. And one of the things they would sell is imitation or replica
guns. Yeah.
Rifles, machine guns. So I went and bought one. And the nozzle, it was made of metal, but it couldn't fire. It looked real. It had a bit of metal in the barrel at the front. I filed it out. I painted it so it looked hollow. Got ready one afternoon and I walked down to this, I went to this TAB and I walked in. It was late afternoon and it's packed. There's men everywhere. There's 5 or 6 televisions with races in Randwick and here and there and everywhere, you know, a lot of noise. And I walk in and I look around and I'm thinking, you're kidding. You know, what am I going to do? Pull out this imitation, say, stick them up. So I went over to the window. There was like a bench and I'm looking out the window thinking, and then I thought, no, I can't do this. This is crazy. And I was about to leave and I hear a voice, excuse me, sir.
Oh.
And I turn around and guess what? Seriously, everyone had gone. But I didn't realise because of the TVs, the race calls going on, and caught up in my thinking. What I didn't realise happened is I walked into the TAB a few minutes, 5 minutes before closing time. They used to close at about 5 and reopen at 7. I didn't know that.
Wow.
Pure coincidence. And the manager had come out from the security enclosure and he's waiting at the door for me to leave so he can close it. So now, and I just stood there looking at him. And he said, excuse me, did you hear what I said? You got to leave now? And I'm looking at him. He said, are you okay? And then I put my hand in the bag and I just popped the nozzle of the gun out. And when he saw the gun, it was like we had rehearsed it. He just turns around, he walks around back into the caged area. I follow him. He goes up to the drawer, opens the drawer, there's all this money. I'm looking at it. He says, have you got a bag? Oh, yeah, a bag.
Oh.
Real professional. I give him the bag. When he'd finished filling it, I said, I want the silver too. I took everything, man, 5-cent pieces, 10-cent pieces. I took everything. And my bag was just chockers. Money was actually falling out of it. And then I said to him, is that all there is? If he'd said yes, I would have gone. And then he said, no, there's a safe.
Oh.
And I said, where is it? And he said, looking down, he said, you're standing on it. It was a wooden floor and there was a trapdoor, and I'm standing right on the trapdoor. So I stepped aside. I said, open it. He lifts it up. There's a big black vault with a combination. The poor guy, he was so flustered. He couldn't get the numbers in his head, and I just wanted to get out. And then someone walked in, someone that knew him, who wanted to place a bet on the last race at whatever. And I said, get rid of him. And so he sits up and he says, oh, we're closed, you can leave. And the old bloke goes, come on, Mick, I've got time. I said, and I put the gun in his ribs. I was just desperate to get out. And he started swearing, fuck off you, and the poor old guy goes, all right, you don't have to swear at me. And he left. He opens the vault. It was a calico bag about so big. And in there, he had tightly rolled up wads of $100 bills and 50. That's where the money was. I took that and I took off. I was shaking, man. I went back to the flat and I had a cold shower to try and calm down. And a while later, I had another one. I couldn't stop shaking. The adrenaline was incredible.
Yeah.
And then I took the money out and I made little piles, thousands. And I remember sitting there in disbelief that I had, by today's standards, around $65,000, $70,000. I expected to get about, I don't know, maximum 10.
Yeah.
And that was it. What would you do if you had that money and you were me? Invest it in the bank?
We both know where would that be going.
Get a mortgage? Yeah.
You wouldn't know. At that time, 65,000 in, how old were you there? 20, 22?
20, 21. I went nuts. I remember I took my girlfriend because she was living in Armadale and I used to hang around Paran, South Yarra, with all the cool people. And I took her to the boutiques in Paran and, what do you want?
Oh,
Pick whatever you want.
The spending.
I took that Christmas, I told the boss, I'm not working anymore, sorry. I spent that Christmas, mate, going to the best of everything. Jumping on an aeroplane, going to surfers, living like a king. Spending days on the beach with the best of this and the best of that, and stoned 24/7. If I was awake, I was out of it. And now, by this stage, it wasn't just cannabis. I mean, just cannabis. You can get addicted to cannabis and it can give you psychosis and you can suffer schizophrenia from cannabis, as I know. But when there was no cannabis, I'd take anything. I could not face reality. And that's my definition of addiction. It's when you can't face the reality of your life, the pain, you just can't face it. So you hide, whatever the drug is, whatever the substance, whatever the experience.
Start abusing it.
And that was me.
How many more robberies do you do after that one?
I did one every couple of months because the money was running out. I also bought 3 cars, one for my girlfriend and 2 for me.
Wow.
Little sports car and this other one that I used to use. So, and I used to sometimes pick which car I was going to drive by the outfit that I was going to wear.
How much money do you reckon you...
Over 200 grand. And I was just every 2 months, and I'll do another one, I got addicted to doing robberies. That's what happens.
The rush as well?
The rush changes. I wasn't scared. I mean, the last one I did, I was driving past it at 2 a.m. It was on St Kilda Road in St Kilda. And as I was driving past, I looked and I saw TAB and I said, I'll rob that tomorrow. Just like that. No qualms, no thinking, just go and do it. Because that's what I did. It was easy. You become blasé. You become careless. And remember, I'm living in a bubble, in a fantasy. I mean, I was sick. I should have said my girlfriend, who was very grateful for all the gifts. She basically, one day, I remember so clearly, she said, do you love me? thank you for all of these things, but do you love me? And I remember I looked at her and I thought, how do you answer that? What's that mean? Because I knew that this word love was special, important somehow, but I didn't have it. And I say to kids in schools, one of the most important things in life is to begin to learn to love who you are.
Yeah, that's right.
Not if you change and do this or do that, just because you're precious. And if you can learn to love you, then you've got something to give to someone else.
That's
but
right.
if you don't have that, you know what you do? Because I was. You become a user, a taker. That's what I did. And I didn't even realise it. And it's a terrible thing to use people, whether it's for sex or whatever it is. So I broke up with her.
Yeah.
And then I went nuts. I went really nuts. And I was not well.
Were you robbing more?
Well, I went to do another one, and that's the day I got caught and nearly killed.
Ooh. How did that one go?
It was the one in St Kilda, as I said. So I went in, as I normally did, close to closing time. I was dressed in a two-piece, dark blue, double-breasted pinstripe suit. You ever watch The Untouchables?
Yes.
I looked like Elliot Ness in The Untouchables. I had a hat on.
Do you feel like at this point there was eyes on you?
No. I was aware that the cops would be after me, but I didn't know how much they were after me. And, every robbery, I impersonated a different person. I mean, the second one, I was a French tourist. I got this little hat with a feather in it and a little goatee thing, and I used a French accent.
Yeah.
When I walked in, I bought some tickets to make it look like I'm a gambler. So I was playing these little fantasy trips in my head. And this time I went in like this well-dressed man and I got my tickets and I went to the side. Everyone left and I'm waiting now for the manager, it was a woman, to come out. Excuse me, we're closed, and then, and leave. But she didn't go to the door. She went to the phone and she started talking to someone on the phone. And I was so stoned, if I wasn't stoned, I would have picked it up straight away. But because I was so stoned, do you know what I thought? She's calling the post office. Post office?
The brain's not there.
Saturday afternoon. There's no post office, you goose. And I hung around, and then I thought, this has taken too long, something's wrong. Now, I was standing against the side wall of the shop. The street was there, big pane glass, right? And I'm standing there, and as I took a step to turn to go, a divvy van pulls up out the front. And when I saw it, my foot went back and my hands froze and my body went stiff. It was weird. And in my head somewhere, the reality of what's happening starts to emerge. It's hard to describe. It was like a physical sensation. It started in my feet and it started working its way up, this fear. And I'm standing there and two cops walk in and one of them walks up behind me and because I hadn't done anything, right? What I didn't know is, and they showed me, they had posters made, which they issued to the tabs, saying if someone comes in and it looks something like this, they had a mannequin, doll thing with, and if he comes in and does this and this, it could be a potential armed robber. Give us a call.
Oh, she was calling the cops.
And she was calling because, I kind of might have been that. So they just walked in to check me out. And one of them walked up behind me and he touched my shoulder and sort of turned me. He said, "Excuse me, sir." Nice and polite. And when he touched me, I shit myself, man. You ever shit yourself?
Nah. She did then, yeah. Wow.
That's a manner of speech, people say, "I shit myself," and I used to think, because I'm a writer, right, and I'm into these words and idioms they're called, sayings. And I used to think, why do people say that? I shit myself.
Yeah.
Well, that day, I literally shit in my pants, mate. When he touched me, it was like a rocket went off in my feet and it went straight through the top of my head.
What a scary feeling, man.
It was like the adrenaline rush from hell. And it just went straight through me. And as I turned, I looked at his eyes and he looked at mine, and I started reaching for the gun, which was inside my suit, in my pants, and he's trying to stop me. This happened so fast. And he's trying to stop me, and I was bigger than him, and he tried to trip me, kick my feet. And I pulled back, he lost balance, and I pushed him, and he fell backwards on his ass. And as he falls down, I get the gun out. His partner has unlocked the security latch on his gun, and he's just pulling it out at the same time. But I get mine out just before him. If he'd got his gun out, I would have been dead.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't blame him because he didn't know it was an imitation.
Yeah.
But right. I got it out first. And I'm swearing, oh, fucking Gillian, put your gun back. And he puts the gun back, and he's, don't do anything. And then I took the gun off the guy on the floor, got his gun. And this is where I could have been a murderer.
Yeah.
And I would have done the other side of 25 years in jail if I ever got out for killing a police officer.
Because now you got the real gun.
I got the real gun, and I've got my finger on the trigger. And seriously, I'll never forget, I was shaking with my finger on the trigger. I couldn't stop shaking. And I'll never forget the look in that man's face, man. It was like someone pulled a blind down on his face and the colour went out of his face, and he went like candle coloured, just like... Because he thought he was about to die, and he could have. I could have left 2 little girls without a daddy and a wife without a husband.
It's crazy how fast your life can change in seconds.
Oh, absolutely.
If you were to pull that trigger right there.
Oh, mate. Just
gone.
The thought.
Yeah.
I think about my life and I think, wow, that could have happened. And not just that, there were so many other incidents where a hair trigger reaction, instead of doing this and doing that, the consequences were horrific, if I'd gone the other way. And so often I felt protected almost, like, was that a coincidence that didn't happen instead of this? It was... Anyway, I get the gun now from one, and I get the other police officer, and I make him jump in the divvy van, and I jump in next to him, and I said, "Drive!"
Oh my God! So you've hostage them.
Because I just wanted to get away, flight and fight. Yeah. Well, now I'm in the flight. I want to go, and he says to me, "Oh, I'm sorry, I haven't got the keys. The cop in there's got the keys." And I look and I see him inside with the manager, and he sees that I'm looking as I try to open the door, and he runs out the back, pulls the security door shut, and he runs down the back of the tab. He disappears. I run in after him after I take his gun as well. So I've got both guns. I run in, but they're gone. The other one's sitting in the car. What do? I run down the street, because in the lane next to at the corner, I've got my little car, a little Spitfire. I run down, I jump in, it's a manual, I flood it.
Oh!
I'm going for it.
So it's pretty much almost imagining a movie, like a horror movie.
Oh,
when there's a killer coming.
It was like a comedy of it. It was like almost some of it was funny, the way it happened. And I'm just about to jump out and run down the lane, and it starts. So I took off and I go through the lanes out onto the street, and I get onto Chapel Street in Paran there, where it crosses with Dandenong Road, right? Dandenong Road's very wide, 4 lanes of traffic, and Chapel Street going across it. And I come to the intersection of Chapel Street and Dandenong Road, and I'm sitting in traffic. Cars all around me, and I couldn't breathe. I pull off the mow, and I'm trying to suck for air. I couldn't breathe. I was freaked out, and I'm thinking, I'll never do that again. They nearly caught me. Blah blah blah. The lights change. I cross over, as I'm driving, a car coming from the opposite direction, a Holden, 2 detectives in it, I discovered later, does a U-turn right behind me. I come to the next street, I turn left, one-way street. I go down, they're right behind me. I'm thinking they're police, got to be police. I come to the end of that street. It actually entered into Dandenong Road further back, and there's 4 lanes of traffic, so I turn left. I couldn't go right, and I'm coming along, and there's an overpass. And as I'm going under the overpass, they come up alongside me, and the detective in the passenger side, he puts a little sign up saying police, and he's saying, pull over, like, pull over.
Oh, my God.
And I'm going, me? Me? So I pull over, and they pull over behind, but they don't pull up close. You know why? Because they know I've got guns.
Yeah.
So they pull up about 20 metres behind, and they start to walk, one on either side, towards my car. And I'm looking, and one of them, he pulls his jacket back, and he pulls out a 357 Magnum.
You'd have to, yeah.
And when I saw that gun, I just hit the accelerator and boom, off, and they ran back. They jump in their cars. They put a siren on the roof.
They're on to you now.
And they're after me. By now, I've got a 100 metre break on them, and I'm zigzagging through the traffic. And I've done this big circle, right? And I come back to Chapel Street and Dandenong Road, and they've got roadblocks across it. And there was one lane open, so all the cars that were pulling up to get through. I go down the side somehow, I don't know how I did it, and I managed to get through that opening, and I turned left again. So I've done this big circle, and I've gone down the same bloody one-way street again. You know, I'm out of control here. Except now, when I looked in the rear vision, it was like a movie. Must have been 5, 6 police cars, and they're chasing me. And I was thinking, this is like a movie, except it's real.
Yeah, it's kicking off now.
And to my, the detectives ended up 3 cars down in the chase. The first 2 were divvy vans. And this was significant because eventually I couldn't get through, and I had to slam the brakes on, and I jumped out and I ran. And I happened to be in some housing commission flats, and they were the ones on stilts, you know, they're up high, and in the middle of the housing commission, there was grass, there was swings. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon. There were kids playing and people picnicking, and I run straight through. And as I'm running, I hear boom, boom, 2 shots. Everyone hits the ground except me. I'm standing there, I've got guns in my hands.
Oh, my God.
And I put my hands up. Now, apparently, those 2 shots were warning shots in the air. And you know who I thought of? My mother and father. What are my mum and dad going to, you know? And I started running, and then I heard 4 shots. The detective who later charged me, the one with the big Magnum, he said to me, "You're lucky to be here." And I said, "What?" He said, "You know, the chase, we ended up a few cars behind. The people that fired at you after you kept running, those cops have got 38s and they're not very good shots. But if it had been me shooting at you, you wouldn't be here."
Wow.
Well, you know.
So they were actually trying to shoot you?
Well, they were, yeah. Those 4 shots were at me. Anyway, I tried to jump over this fence. I hit the top. I fell on my back. And as I tried to get up, I heard a voice behind me. "Move and I'll blow your fucking head off."
That's it. Game over.
And I turned around and like that, aimed right at me. And there's a gun there and there's another one there. And I look at him and then I think, no.
Nah, that's it.
And that's it. They picked me up, dragged me across the road, threw me up against the divvy van. The police officer whose gun I took in the tab, he arrived and he was trying to smash me. And he swear, and they're all holding him saying, "Not here. There's witnesses here." And then just to finish this story on a funny kind of note, the handcuffs went on and, they were tight. And they got me up against the divvy van, face in the bonnet. And I hear this voice next to me, a female. And she says, "Oh, you stink." And I turned around and I thought, oh, she's pretty good looking. And she was. She was a nice boy. And then I thought, why are you saying that? You know, I wear expensive cologne, mate. I wear underarm deodorant. What's the matter with you? I didn't know that I'd shit in my pants.
Oh,
and that's what she was.
Wow.
Yeah. So I went back to the cop shop, Russell Street as it was in those days, and they chained me to a table and they slapped me around. And I would have got the beating from hell, mate, for what I did to the police.
100%, yeah.
And the only reason I didn't is when they said, you know, who are you, what do you do? I said, I'm a law student. And they said, what? I said,
A law student.
I'm a law student. They didn't believe me.
There he is. That's the law student there.
That's right.
My God.
They didn't believe me, and then I dropped a name because they asked me questions, and I said, look, this is my name, this is where I live. I refuse to say anything else because Professor, and I won't mention his name now, said that if we ever get caught, we have to say that, and that's all we have to say, and I want to see him.
Oh, my God.
And back in those days, an inquiry had been done of the police corruption. And that law professor was the prosecutor against the police, right? And so they knew the name. And then they said, how do you know him? And I said, I told you, I'm a law student. And then they checked out and they came back and they roughed me up a bit, but they were much nicer.
Wow.
Yeah.
How long did you serve in prison for?
Back in those days, they'd give you a maximum minimum, like now, but you could earn remission on your minimum, which is you could earn so many months off a year for good behaviour.
Okay.
I got 11 years with an 8-year minimum. I ended up doing 5.5 years.
Wow.
One sentence, never went back, but it was a big whack, as they say in prison. It was a big one. And I was a young man. You know, I just turned 22 when I went to jail, and I knew nothing about prison. And I wasn't green, I wasn't stupid. I'd grown up in Carlton, it was pretty rough. But, you know, I mean, prison's just another world.
Yeah.
It's a subculture, its own language, its own rules, its own how you look at people or don't look at people.
100%. It's a whole different system in there.
Oh, absolutely.
You know? And you spent some time studying there from what I was reading about.
Well, when I went through, they process you. They look at who you are, what you've done, how long you're in and all that, right? And they realised I'm doing a long time, but they also realised I'm a university student. They could use me.
Wow.
Because most prisoners aren't educated very much. So I got a job, they gave me a job working in what they called classification, and it was like a clerk's job. And once a week, they would have a meeting in that part of the prison for new prisoners. Where are we going to put them? And I had to, you know, type and put things in files, and that was my job. And there were 6 other inmates. So I worked there for the first year. And then after that, a friend of mine who was a lawyer, he said, Arthur, you're going to spend the next 5 years working for these assholes? Or are you going to look after you? And I said, what do you mean? He said, why don't you finish your education while you're in here? I thought, yeah, that's a good idea. So I applied for full-time education and I got it. And I was one of the very few. I mean, if anyone didn't need it, it was me.
Yeah.
But the others didn't see the value of education, and the system didn't push education because it costs money to have teachers and stuff.
What did so you finished your law degree in there?
Well, I picked up subjects, the one I'd failed and the one that I dropped, I picked those up and I passed them. And then I was about to do a few more because I had about a year to go to finish. And that's when they moved me from A Division in Pentridge. They sent me to Beechworth Prison in northeast Victoria, which is medium security. I didn't want to go at first because I was happy being in A Division, you know.
Yeah.
You know, Crim's there, left you alone. Everyone was doing their own
Everyone's
thing.
doing their own thing, yeah.
Yeah. But when they said to me, you might get temporary leaves, you might get permission to, go out on a visit instead of being, because it's medium security. When I heard that and longer visits,
I'm going to get out of here as quick as I can.
yeah. And so I went there, and that was not a good choice because, it's a whole other story. And then I stopped my studies. And then a year later, I picked them up. But the further I went, because drugs were getting in the way too, the lower the security, the more drugs.
That's right.
And, I was getting stoned all the time. So who can study when you're stoned? So, I dropped them, I started them, I dropped them. So when I got out of prison, I hadn't quite finished it. I was very close. But then I decided to completely drop it, that I never should have picked up law. And that's when I did, years later, criminology. At the age of 40, I went back to uni and I did criminology.
The study of criminology is the study of behaviour.
It's the study of the criminal justice system, and it includes a lot of things. The behaviour of criminals, why do people become criminals, how do we rehabilitate criminals, young offenders, how the system works, policing, the courts and the prisons, those three areas, policing, the courts and the prisons.
So it's got a bit of law in there as well.
A bit of psychology, a bit of law, a bit of sociology, a bit of everything, really. And I focused on the prison system. That became my specialty. Why? Because I'd been through it, man. I'd lived it. I knew what happened. And I did that for many years, decades.
Wow.
Trying to help prisoners.
What do you feel like is the prison system failing these days?
I think the prison system has been given a job. There's an expectation among the public that is completely unrealistic. That somehow, when the institutions, the social institutions like family and education and community, when all those things have failed these people and they end up in the arse end of the system, which is prison, I mean, is there anywhere worse you can go than prison? When you end up in that place, there's an expectation that somehow that experience is going to fix you.
No.
Are you kidding me? That is the most unnatural place in the world. And the other thing is, people end up there, and some people who have been in the system too long don't mind being there. In fact, they like being there because it's so easy. You don't have to do anything.
That's right.
You get fed 3 meals a day. You don't have to pay any taxes or bills. They clothe you, they feed you, they house you. You got some friends. It's not bad. And then you've got to get out and go and fend for yourself, find somewhere to live, earn money and blah, blah, blah. So it's an unrealistic expectation that prison rehabilitates. It doesn't.
Doesn't.
And it doesn't make society safer. No. If anything, research will show you that people that end up in prison make society less safe because one day they're going to get out. And they're not better equipped to cope with the problems which caused them to be there in the first place. You see, this is the problem.
That's the problem. And that's why it goes back to a lot of these juniors creating this chaos and these machete wars. Okay, but what is the reason?
What is the reason?
What is the reason they're committing these crimes with these... I don't feel like they wake up one day and say, I'm going to go get a machete and swing it at someone. I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either, mate.
Yeah, but it's easy for a lot of people to blame and say, why aren't the police doing anything? I think it's more than just the police.
What can come on, get real?
Yeah, but that's what they say. Why is the crime up? Okay, why is it? Maybe a lot of these people come from disprivileged areas. Serious.
Well, of course.
You know what I mean?
And some of these young people we're referring to, and I think a lot of the public know, but we're not specific. We don't say it's this race or that race. We say young people, but I think a lot of us know who we're talking about, these young people. And, a lot of these young people, as you said, they they come from some backgrounds where they've already suffered some horrific experiences.
Yeah.
And they come here and a lot of them are traumatised and they don't fit.
That's right.
Either for the colour of their skin or their background experience, their culture is so different to this culture. And Australia, the further it goes, the less able people are to become assimilated. You know, we pride ourselves that we're really, what's the word we use, multicultural. Well, you know, that's changed, man. It's not like it used to be back in the old days. Even then there were problems, but now they're getting worse. Why? Because there's a lot more pressure on society generally. The cost of living's gone through the roof. There are global issues. It's not just Australia. Australians sometimes need to wake up and realise just how well off we are in this country, man.
Yeah.
Go and live in some other cultures and see what it's like. But we're copying some of the effect of that.
That's right.
And we're not used to it and we don't like it. So we start to look for scapegoats to blame. Now, I'm not excusing these young people. I reckon if you're going to be violent and you're going to go and use machetes and terrify people, yeah, you should be taken out of the community and put in a place. Call it a prison if you want. But use the time in the most productive way you can to try and help these young people to understand that what they're doing is wrong. How do you do that?
That's the question, yeah.
How do you do that? That is, and see, to me, that's what we call the Band-Aid approach. Sticking a Band-Aid on a deep and infected wound, and it's not going to go away.
No.
You see, the thing I always say to people is, yeah, you can do this and you can do that and you can do all these things. But what about trying to prevent the problem happening in the first place? How do you do that? How do you create a family for a kid that doesn't know what a family means? How do you provide a relationship with a man that a kid, a young boy, has never had? How do you do that? How do you create a community where they feel they belong, that they can actually make a contribution, where they feel loved and respected? How do you do that? How do you do that? I think, you know, we call those systemic issues. They're not just individuals, and they're not even a particular cultural or ethnic group. It's the way the system has become. And I'll give you a quote to illustrate it, a statistic which I use a lot. Research about 10 years ago now showed us that 50% of all Victorian prisoners, half of them, come from just 6% of Victorian postcodes.
Ooh.
Think about that a minute. Half of all prisoners come from 6%. There are hundreds and hundreds of postcodes in Victoria. 1 in 4 prisoners come from 2% of postcodes. 2%. Which postcodes are we talking about? Now, you don't have to tell me. Most of us know where we don't want to live in Melbourne.
Yeah. My suburbs, yeah. Yeah, straight up.
We know the postcodes. Little boys growing up in those postcodes are going to drop out of school for the wrong reasons. And some of them are smart kids.
Very smart.
They've got a good brain, but they've never used it. They don't even know what that means. And they hang out with other kids who do certain things, and they start getting into habits, and they think this is what normal is. And they might have family problems and issues, cultural issues. They might have colour issues because they don't fit in, they're not white, right? Whatever it is. They drop out of school, and what do they drop into? A trade? A job? No. They drop into what? Unemployment benefits.
That's right.
How far are you going to go with that?
Not much.
What can you buy with that?
Not much.
When everyone's buying all the latest of this and that and everything else. So they drop into that, and then they drop into substances, alcohol and drugs.
That leads into crime.
And then that leads to petty crime. And you enter the youth justice system at some point.
And it begins.
Now, once you enter, and I worked in the youth justice system for, 5 years all up. When you enter the youth justice system, it's like a big net, and it's really wide, and it sucks all the fish in, and then it narrows. And this is how a lot of nets work. As they trawl through the sea. And the fish get pulled down, 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 down into the one tight little bunch at the end. And then you lift them out, right? And they call what I'm discussing with young offenders net widening, that the net is wide, they enter through the youth justice system and they get sucked in, right? Once they get a criminal record and they think, and some of them think that's bravado, I'm tough, I've been in prison and all this bullshit. Research shows 50% of kids that end up in the youth justice system in 5 years are in adult prison. 50% in 5 years. Do you know what it costs to keep a kid in the youth justice system for 1 year? Around $1 million Australian dollars.
Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a lot of money.
So we're putting all this money into what? Into what? What are we achieving? So my challenge is always, if we know that those suburbs exist with those little boys, why don't we go there and try and nip the problem in the bud before it becomes a huge problem?
Beautiful saying, yeah.
Yeah, but you know what, Ahmad? How do you do that? How do you change society? How do you change a society that is greedy? Because our society is very greedy. It's all about me, mine, you know. And more of things, you know. We want. Why are there poor people? Why are there rich people? The gap's getting bigger in Australia.
Yeah.
And it's creating
100%.
all sorts of social problems. And the poor people, the problems are becoming marginalised more and more in those suburbs. So how do you fix that? I'm sorry, but this is where I'm not optimistic, because I don't think the way we are, the way we think, the way we behave, our morals, our principles, our ethical standards, I think the way things are, it's going to get worse. I really do.
And that's why crime rate is through the roof.
Yeah.
You know, because you explained it perfectly. We're not looking at how to fix the problem.
Yeah, the causes.
Yeah.
The causes.
And you're very right. You're not seeing much of this crime in the city side. I'll be honest with you. It all happens in the northern suburbs.
A lot of it does.
Yeah.
A lot of it does.
And that's why I look back now and say a lot of my friends are in jail or dead.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And some of them were excellent students. But like you said, they leave and the environments that they're in, it's at a disadvantage and it sets you back.
It does.
And then you start to hate yourself and you start to get violent. And then you turn to crime and the journey never ends. What a conversation we've had. I just wanted to check if you have a website. Do you have a website?
Oh, look, I've got a website. I sort of put it together years ago. I haven't sort of but anyway, it's there.
You look like a model there, mate. What's going on there?
Oh, I was a pretty boy, wasn't I? Hey, when I went to prison, I met the famous Chopper Reed.
Oh, Glenn was talking about him.
I met Chopper Reed. He just had his ears lobbed off, and I used to go across to G Division, it was called, right? Because I was in D and G was next door. And G Division in those days in Pentridge was for the, psych cases.
Yeah, it's a real psych case.
And they had him there because he'd had his ears cut off and they thought he's a bit mad, put him in there. Because he was in H Division and he wanted to get out, and he did, but he went to G Division. And I used to go over there once a week for typing lessons. And there was a pretty little typing teacher, which is the main reason I used to go and do a bit of flirting. And anyway, one day I'm sitting there talking to her, and this guy appears, you big guy too, and he had a grey coat on, buttoned right to the top. And he comes up and he says, "Hey, mate, who are you?" And I look up, and I didn't know who he was, right? And I said, "Oh, my name's Arthur." And he looks at me and he goes, "You're a pretty boy, aren't you?" and then he said, "What do you think? Am I pretty too?" And he had sort of his hair covering his ears, and he pulled his hair back, and I saw his ears, and then I realised, because I'd heard someone had lopped him, and I realised who it was. And I didn't know what to say. He He picked her up because he knew her well, and he just put her right up in the air. He was a big boy. He's got her up. Then she's saying, "Put me down, Chopper. Put me down." I would have loved to have got to meet Chopper because he was a smart bloke.
Yeah, he knew it.
But he was one of these kids who started early. I reckon Chopper could have done anything. You know, he could have, like a lot of them. I met so many blokes in there, and I used to think, you're wasting your life, man. Yeah. You could be doing so much. And it's one of the reasons I decided that I had to try and make my little contribution and try and salvage some lives from that experience, because I knew, you know, I met so many of them who started as little kids who were disadvantaged in some way or another. And it's not an excuse, you know.
It's just the truth reality.
You've just got to accept that they were damaged and they were disadvantaged and they were hurt. And, you know, you can't excuse behaviour, but you can understand that someone could get damaged to the point where they start to do things that aren't the right things.
That's right.
And they're going to need help to turn it around.
100%. A message you would like to share to the world before we finish off?
Oh, wow. It's a big one. I guess the thing I've learned at my age and stage, because, you know, I'm not old yet, but I'm an older man, and I've been around a while, and I think one of the things I said earlier about loving yourself, to me that's one of the most significant things you can try and grapple with, whether you're young or whether you're older. To ask, you know, look at your life, and if you don't like who you are, to realise that there is the ability to change and to start to turn around the damage, the suffering, whatever it is, and to become the person that deep in your soul you want to become. Yeah. Because most of us have that, don't we? You know, I wish I was more like this, or I wish I didn't do that, or what. The thing is, though, it's very difficult, almost impossible, getting back to what we said initially, to do it on your own. You need people to do it. You need friends. You need community. If you're young, you need role models. Who are your heroes? You know, I say to kids, who are your heroes? Who are the people that you want to be like? Because that is a really significant issue, because we do model without even realising it. We learn. Why do we have, you know, famous elite sports people and movie stars and singers, and, you know, we look up to them, or young people in particular. I want to be like that. I want to be. And try and find good role models.
That's right.
And when you come across someone who you think's a bit different, and you like what you hear or what you see, try and learn from people like that. You know, ask questions, which is what you were talking about, questions, you know, and get on that journey of trying to begin to love who you are, because life is precious short.
Yep. Couldn't disagree there with you. I think it is I think we undervalue life. We don't understand it.
And to be, you know, in the moment, today, now, it's good to have plans, but it's important, and I say this particularly for adults, because a lot of us aren't present. We aren't present to people. We aren't present to experiences. We aren't present to what's around us. We don't notice. We don't observe. We don't appreciate, you know, the beauty of nature. The older I'm getting, the more I love to smell the flowers, you know, and sit there beside a river and just look at the river and look at a little baby in a pram and think, you know, I used to be like that. I used to be precious and sweet and beautiful.
Valuing all the little things.
Absolutely.
The little things
absolutely.
matter.
And, you know, live your life, don't exist. Because a lot of us exist. And life is too precious to just exist. So, you know, grab life with both hands.
Thank you very much for coming on, ladies and gentlemen. Arthur, thank you. It's an absolute pleasure to sit down and listen to you, and I hope many of the listeners learn from this great experience and understand to value life.
Thank you.
You've been incredible.
I appreciable.
You've been incredible.
All the best to you.
Thank you. Been incredible. That was